And everybody tried to leave because they couldn't have as good a life there as they could outside. And they got wind of what was going on outside, and they tried to get away, and they couldn't. So people and businesses move and go to a place that is more tax-friendly. We see this happening right now. Look at California. We just passed a new budget, a couple months ago, right? And now we're in another mess again. I mean, they say that California, I believe I just heard this. Don't quote me on the exact number, but we're like $28 billion underwater in the next year and a half. This state is, all right? And people are leaving, and businesses are leaving and going to more tax-friendly states like Texas, for example, which is one of the states in which we like to invest. And so when you raise taxes, you suppress activity because people don't take risk, businesses don't take risk, people leave, businesses leave. They just move. They go to a more friendly place. And right now with the auto workers, we were talking about this before we started filming today. I'll be broadcasting tomorrow from the auto show on KBC, and we're seeing the big three automakers that have been in business for so long, like one of the backbones of our country, right? The unions have put these companies out of business. Now, granted, I think they have uncreative management and they haven't done a very good job. But and that's part of the problem. And the problem is multifaceted, of course. But when you force companies to pay so much and you tax them to death, and another way you tax them is through high labor costs, all right? When they can't compete for employees in a free market situation, they can't sustain it. They'll just leave. They have to. So, that's what happens.
Well, it's interesting what's happening right now. We were talking before that you think they've reached an agreement with the...
I think they did. I just heard that this morning. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to find out because a lot of people think that, the auto industry and the automakers in this country become antiquated.
Well, they have, to some extent. But the thing that bugs me about this is a hard one. And the reason is that I hate to see the fact that the environmentalists and the, politicians who have regulated businesses to death have chased America's manufacturing base out of the country. Right, exactly. And the automakers, as much as I don't like the fact that they have been bullied by unions, they are overpaying, they are rewarding the wrong things, they are paying for inefficiencies, and they've got all these environmental restrictions that they've got to deal with in their manufacturing processes that you don't have to deal with in China, okay, or in many other countries. And so, the problem is, on one side, I'm definitely not for a bailout, okay, of anybody, really, unless I get one too. All right. Yeah. So, I did one of my podcasts, a recent one. You might have seen this when you were listening to some of them on my site. I think it's the one before the last where I interviewed Harry Dent. But before that, it was entitled, "Dude, Where's My Bailout?" So the environment we're in now, Ray, is an environment where gains and profits are privatized, but losses are socialized.
Socialized, exactly.
Socialized to the detriment of us, of the middle class. And not just through taxes, through devaluation of the formerly almighty dollar.
Now you talk about what we're talking about here is what you've said, the culture of victimization. You're getting paid for something that you didn't earn. It's coming off of our backs here. As long as they're making profits, it's fine, but then socialize the losses, and we're taking on those losses.
We are. We are.
Well, let's talk about some of the good news here, and then I have another question here from one of our online people. Where can we go to make this better for the middle class person, the person who's trying to make it here?
Well, we have many strategies when it comes to investing, but one of the core strategies that I'll try and sum up quickly is this one. Play the game or game the system the same way our government does, and the same way the fat cats on Wall Street do. Use debt, my favorite four-letter word, okay, in a prudent manner. Because debt is devalued through inflation. And with all of these bailouts, money is being created in quantities never seen before in the history of the United States. Okay? So here's the thing. This money, in order for this dollar to be valuable, it needs one very important component: scarcity. Right. Because when this is not scarce, it loses value. Look at grains of sand are much less valuable than diamonds because they're available in abundance and diamonds are scarce. Okay? Dollars, if they are abundant, they plummet in value. Dollars are being created like crazy right now through bailouts, stimulus packages, just money is being created like crazy. Now, the metaphor for this is the printing press, but only about 5% of our money is actually printed. Most of it's just created out of thin air with a couple of mouse clicks on a computer, all right? And it's just pumped into the system, if you will, into the credit system. And when that's created, it is devalued. Now, this devaluation of our money basically destroys our savings, it destroys our stocks, it destroys the value of our bonds, and thankfully, Ray, it destroys the value of our debts also.
Oh, that's great.
That is the beautiful thing. See, if one of the viewers here was, if they were to buy the median price single-family home in the early 70s, and they got a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, and they lived in this home and they paid for it. It wasn't a rental property. Like, I love debt because I don't pay my debts. My tenants do in all my properties. And I have properties nicely diversified. We talked about how all real estate is local. I have properties in 11 states and 17 cities, diversified geographically, okay? And I use debt on them because the debt is being paid, if you will, in quotes, through inflation. And as the dollar is devalued, so is the value of that debt. That person in the early 70s who bought that median price house, Ray, they would have actually, by 2001, 30 years later, have been paid to borrow that money. And that's for a house they lived in, okay? It's amazing. This is the ultimate trick. And if you think about it, this is what our government does too. They do the same plan. They borrow tons of money from countries like China, okay? They float treasury bills, and they're purchased by foreign governments, and then they devalue their own currency. I say intentionally, but that's debatable. They devalue the currency, and the value of that debt disappears into thin air. Think about it. If the U.S. owes $10 trillion to other countries and other entities, and you have 10% inflation, and I say the true rate of inflation is about 10 to 12%, in 1 year, you got $1 trillion of that debt just magically repaid.
Wow.
That is the system they use. Yeah. So we, as regular, everyday people, as investors, should use the same system they use. They teach us a good lesson.